The Mao era and its revolutionary economic policies, 1949 to 1976. After the Communist Party of China, CPC, took power in 1949, Mao Zedong's primary focus was to rebuild China's war-torn economy and society. At this time, China was primarily agrarian, with limited industrial capacity. Mao's vision for a socialist state relied on heavy centralization and control over production. His initial policies included the redistribution of land from wealthy landlords to peasants, a move that drastically changed the social landscape and set the tone for the Communist Party's approach to economics, favoring collective ownership over individual enterprise. The first five-year plan, 1953 to 1957, drew heavily from the Soviet model, prioritizing heavy industries such as steel, coal, and machinery production. These industries were intended to lay the foundation for future industrialization. However, the plan did little to address China's vast agricultural needs, leading to imbalances between urban and rural areas. Although industrial output increased, inefficiencies in resource allocation were common, leading to waste and corruption. Mao also faced opposition within the party, particularly from those who believed that a more gradual approach to modernization was needed. Mao's second major initiative, the Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962, was aimed at accelerating China's industrial growth and transitioning to a more self-sufficient economy. This initiative was built on the collectivization of agriculture and the creation of large communes where private land ownership was abolished. Peasants were expected to work in collective farms while also contributing to backyard furnaces that were intended to produce steel. The ambitious goal was to catch up with Western industrialized nations within a short period. However, poor planning and lack of expertise led to a disastrous outcome. The emphasis on production figures over practical results caused widespread inefficiencies and falsified reports. The failure of the Great Leap Forward triggered one of the worst famines in history, with estimates of deaths ranging from 15 to 45 million. This catastrophe was a significant blow to Mao's credibility. The Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, marked the next phase in Mao's attempt to reshape Chinese society and the economy. Initially conceived as a political movement to purge capitalist and traditionalist elements from Chinese culture, it devolved into widespread chaos. Industries were disrupted, schools were closed, and intellectuals were persecuted, as Mao sought to reassert his ideological dominance over the party and the country. Economic productivity plummeted during this time, and it wasn't until Mao's death in 1976 that the country began to stabilize politically and economically. The post-Mao transition, Deng Xiaoping's reforms, 1978 to 1992. Following Mao's death, a power struggle ensued, culminating in the rise of Deng Xiaoping, who was determined to modernize China's economy. Deng's approach, often referred to as socialism with Chinese characteristics, was a pragmatic blend of socialist and capitalist principles. He famously stated, "It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice," signaling his willingness to adopt market-oriented reforms if they improved the standard of living for the Chinese people. Deng's first major reform was the household responsibility system in agriculture. Under this system, collective farming was dismantled, and individual households were allowed to lease land from the state and sell their surplus crops on the market after meeting state quotas. This reform sparked a dramatic increase in agricultural productivity, leading to better living conditions for millions of rural Chinese. It also marked a shift from the rigid collectivist policies of Mao's era to a more flexible, market-driven approach. In the early 1980s, Deng introduced special economic zones, SEZs, starting with Shenzhen, which was strategically located near Hong Kong. These zones were designed to attract foreign investment and facilitate trade by offering tax incentives, fewer regulatory barriers, and modern infrastructure. Shenzhen, in particular, became a symbol of China's economic liberalization, transforming from a small fishing village into a sprawling metropolis and global manufacturing hub. These SEZs laid the groundwork for China's export-driven economy, turning it into the factory of the world. During this period, China also saw the development of township and village enterprises, TVEs, which allowed for small-scale private businesses to operate in rural areas. These enterprises played a crucial role in absorbing surplus labor from agriculture and promoting rural industrialization. Deng's reforms were cautious and incremental, avoiding radical changes that might disrupt social stability. The dual-track economy allowed for the coexistence of state-controlled and market-driven sectors, giving China a unique blend of socialism and capitalism, industrialization, urbanization, and economic growth, 1980s-1990s. China's shift toward an industrial economy accelerated in the 1980s and 1990s. The opening of SEZs and the influx of foreign direct investment, FDI, led to the development of a robust manufacturing sector, particularly in electronics, textiles, and machinery. By leveraging its abundant labor supply, low wages, and increasing technological know-how, China became a major player in global trade. Foreign companies, attracted by the low cost of production, set up factories in coastal cities, exporting goods to markets in North America, Europe, and beyond. As the economy expanded, millions of rural workers migrated to urban areas in search of employment. Cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Shanghai experienced rapid population growth, creating new economic opportunities, but also significant social challenges. Urban infrastructure struggled to keep pace with the influx of migrants, leading to issues such as overcrowding, pollution, and housing shortages. The hukou system, a household registration system that restricted access to social services for rural migrants, exacerbated these issues by creating a divide between urban residents and rural workers living in cities. The state-owned enterprise, SOE, reforms of the 1990s were another critical element of China's economic transformation. Many SOEs were inefficient and unprofitable, draining state resources. Under Premier Zhu Rongji's leadership, the government undertook a massive restructuring program, closing down unprofitable SOEs, reducing state control over industries, and laying off millions of workers. This was a painful but necessary step in making the Chinese economy more competitive globally. At the same time, the government retained control over key strategic sectors such as energy, telecommunications, and defense. In 1989, the Tiananmen Square protests highlighted the growing tension between economic liberalization and political repression. The protests, which began as calls for political reform, escalated into a national movement that was violently suppressed by the government. The crackdown drew international condemnation and temporarily halted foreign investment. However, the government quickly shifted its focus back to economic development, recognizing that continued growth was essential for maintaining its legitimacy and control. China's entry into the World Trade Organization, 2001, and global integration. China's accession to the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2001 was a watershed moment in its economic development. WTO membership allowed China to further integrate into the global economy, granting it access to international markets and reducing trade barriers. This opened the floodgates for foreign investment and trade, and China quickly became the world's largest exporter. The country's manufacturing sector grew exponentially, and China earned its reputation as the factory of the world. Foreign companies, particularly in electronics and textiles, outsourced production to China, taking advantage of its skilled labor force and relatively low wages. China's rapid industrialization also had profound effects on global supply chains. As a key link in the global production network, China imported raw materials from around the world, processed them into finished goods, and exported them to major consumer markets like the United States and Europe. This interdependence fostered greater economic ties between China and the rest of the world, but also made China vulnerable to fluctuations in global demand. Despite its success, China's export-driven growth model faced challenges. Over-reliance on exports made the economy vulnerable to external shocks, such as the 2008 global financial crisis. Additionally, rising wages and labor shortages in coastal cities began to erode China's competitive advantage in low-cost manufacturing. These challenges prompted the government to shift its focus toward domestic consumption and technological innovation as drivers of future growth. Xi Jinping's economic policies and the shift to high-quality growth, 2012 present. Under President Xi Jinping, China's economic strategy has undergone significant changes. But Xi has emphasized the need for high-quality growth, focusing on reducing excessive debt, cutting overcapacity in industries like steel and coal, and addressing environmental degradation. Under his leadership, China has undertaken massive infrastructure projects, including the ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, aimed at extending China's influence by investing in infrastructure projects in Asia, Africa, and Europe. This initiative reflects China's growing ambition to play a central role in global economic affairs. Xi has also prioritized innovation and technological development as key drivers of future growth. China has made significant investments in sectors such as artificial intelligence, AI, 5G technology, and electric vehicles, EVs, aiming to become a global leader in these fields. Companies like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent have emerged as global tech giants, challenging the dominance of Western firms in the digital economy. However, Xi's tenure has also seen increased state intervention in the economy. The government has tightened its control over key sectors, including finance, technology, and real estate, and has launched a sweeping tightened its control over key sectors, including finance, technology, and real estate, and has launched a sweeping anti-corruption campaign aimed at consolidating power and maintaining the party's control over the economy. The government has taken steps to rein in tech companies, fearing they could grow too powerful or challenge state authority, as seen in the increased regulatory scrutiny on major firms like Alibaba and Didi. Another aspect of Xi's policies has been addressing the growing income inequality within China. As the country has rapidly industrialized, a significant wealth gap has emerged between urban and rural areas and between different regions of the country. Xi's government has promoted policies aimed at common prosperity, seeking to reduce income inequality by redistributing wealth and investing in underdeveloped regions. Despite the reforms and the focus on high-quality growth, China's economy faces significant challenges. The aging population poses a long-term threat to economic growth as the labor force shrinks and the costs of caring for the elderly rise. Additionally, the trade war with the United States, which began in 2018, has exposed vulnerabilities in China's export-dependent economy. The COVID-19 pandemic further exacerbated these challenges, disrupting supply chains and slowing global demand for Chinese goods. Looking forward, China aims to transition from a manufacturing-based economy to one driven by innovation, services, and domestic consumption. This shift will be essential for maintaining sustainable growth as the country faces an increasingly complex global environment. At the same time, China's growing economic influence will continue to shape global trade, geopolitics, and technology, ensuring that its evolution remains a topic of significant international interest. This expansion has explored the detailed, step-by-step transformation of China's economy, from Mao's centrally planned, agrarian-focused policies to today's hybrid model that integrates socialism with significant market-oriented reforms. China's remarkable rise over the past few decades is a testament to the country's ability to adapt and reform, but it also highlights ongoing challenges that will define its future trajectory.